So focusing on the inequality and injustice, it was like, oh my God, I see myself in Bree because I was also at this PWI trying to fit in, trying to figure out where I could go. But at the end of the day, it's like, I was this minority Black girl trying to fit into these white spaces, and it's like, do I really want to try to always appease them and fit in?
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Cover2Cover Podcast. I am your host, Jaron Bingham. On today's episode of the Cover2Cover Podcast, we're going to dive into a wonderful world of magic by way of Tracy Deonn's book, Legendborn. This book, there's so much in this book that I'm going to just kind of get through the like, the share, the subscribes. Please do that here to Cover2Cover. You know we're going to be dropping good book content for you guys throughout the weeks, throughout the months to continue to inspire you to read. And so also another thing, spoilers, Cover2Cover, forgive me. I took too many shots. Cover2Cover is filled with spoilers. So if you haven't read the book yet and you don't want your book spoiled, just pause the episode, come back later on. After you like, share, and subscribe, finish the book, hop up in it, and then we're going to jump right up into it for you guys, okay? I am here today with a very special person, future lawyer, avid reader, book nerd, the whole nine, a good friend, my dear Miss Lauren Covington. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here on this podcast, and I'm super excited to start talking about this book because this book is amazing.
Yeah, book nerd.
Yeah, I try.
When did you discover this book? Before we jump into it, when did you hop into it?
So I started getting back into. So growing up, I was a really big reader.
Mm-hmm.
I love reading. I love being in the library, reading different books. I am a product of a person who's reading like Harry Potter, the Twilight books, all that stuff. And then as an adult, it's like, oh, you don't really have time to like do all those things that you did when you were younger. So about 2 years ago, I really was like, you know what? I'm going to get back into reading.
Yeah.
And so this was one of the first books that I read that helped me get back into reading. And it was a phenomenal book. And it was very beginner friendly. It's a YA book. The fantasy was great. The world building was great. So it was something that got me right back into reading. And then, now I'm back reading all the time.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to read the synopsis for the audience, and then we're going to jump right up into it. After her mother dies in an accident, 16-year-old Bree Matthews wants nothing to do with her family memories or childhood home. A residential program for bright high schoolers at UNC Chapel Hill seems like the perfect escape until Bree witnesses a magical attack at her very first night on campus. A flying demon feeding on human energies. A secret society of so-called Legendborn students that hunt these creatures down, and a mysterious teenage mage who calls himself a Merlin and who attempts and fails to wipe Bree's memory of everything she saw. The mage's failure reveals Bree's own unique magic and a buried memory with a hidden connection. The night her mother died, another Merlin was at the hospital. Now that Bree knows there's more to her mother's death than what's on the police report, she'll do whatever it takes to find out the truth, even if that means infiltrating the Legendborn as one of its initiates. She recruits Nick, a self-exiled Legendborn, with his own grudge against the group, and their reluctant partnership pulls them deeper into the society's secrets and closer to each other. But when the Legendborn reveals themselves as the descendants of King Arthur's knights and explain that a magical war is coming, Bree has to decide how far she'll go for the truth and whether she should use her magic to take the society down or to join the fight. That is the summary of Legendborn, and you kind of answered this earlier, but what made you choose this book for this podcast?
So, when you are reading this book or going into this book, it's a book by a Black author. That's number one. Like, you don't see a lot of books by fantasy sci-fi authors that are by Black authors, and you don't see a lot of them in the mainstream. As someone who's on Book Talk, people are always talking about these books that different white authors are making and stuff like that, and no one really gets into the breadth of like, oh, these are the different types of things that Black authors are talking about. Mm-hmm. So when I saw this book and I saw a Black girl on the cover, I was like, I gotta read this.
Yeah.
So, and then reading the synopsis of it and like seeing that it had King Arthur, like a lot of people don't dive into the aspect of the King Arthur, history and stuff like that. And so, like, I think I can only think of one other time a Black artist talked about the King Arthur, and that was like Black Knight with Martin Lawrence, and that's an old movie. So this is actually something really refreshing. Like, it's not really so much into like, oh, this is like, Harry Potter type theme. It's not. It's something different. Yeah. And so getting that King Arthur aspect is really, really, like, really great.
Even when I was reading some of the reviews, they kind of said this is a Black version of King Arthur. And can you kind of, like, for the audience, explain very concisely King Arthur and everything that kind of goes on with him?
Yeah, so the King Arthur's Round Table is a very historic figure, especially in European culture. And in this book, they dive into like the different aspects of King Arthur with their descendants, and the author really takes it and manipulates it into a way where it's showcased it in modern world times, like it's in modern times. So I think that part of the King Arthur history is super important, and like learning about the Round Table and the Knights and how important it was, in them taking that aspect of it and making it into a more modernized, where it's like demons and more magical, and there's more to it. I think that's really cool. Yeah.
And I want to add to that. So I was kind of telling Quay Sean, the engineer, off the mic, earlier, that, with it, when war comes, the Knights of the Round Table, their scions are called.
Yeah.
And of course, when the war kind of reaches its peak, King Arthur's scion is called. And so essentially, what we see in this book, Bree Matthews, she hops on, she joins this kind of early college program for accelerated high school students. Mm-hmm. She is essentially the only Black character in this predominantly white college secret society that she ultimately ends up joining.
And if you remember in the first part of the book, when she goes to the mansion the second time for the to start the trials and to get a part of the order, Tor was like, "Oh, we have diversity this year."
Yeah.
And it was like, and everyone looked at Bree like,
Yeah. There's a lot of themes in this book. It's like, and that's one of the things that I really appreciated about the book, and we'll that's one of our questions later on, is the number of themes that are explored.
Yeah.
From grief, legacy, identity, and so forth and so on.
And that's another reason why I like the book, because I feel like anybody can pick up this book and relate to it.
Yeah.
With all the things that Bree has going on. Like, Bree has went through some stuff in this book.
Yeah.
And so it's like, with all those things that she has going on, I believe that someone can pick up this book and be like, oh, I identify with that. I understand this. I understand trying to belong, going through grief, or something like that. I think that's also a good reason why this is a really great book.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. There's so much packed in this story.
Yeah.
We're going to jump straight to the questions, but I kind of want to give people something to follow through. So essentially, the book opens up. It's Bree, her best friend Alice, first day of school.
Yep.
They see magic. Well, Bree sees magic.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, what ends up happening is one of the main characters, Sel, kind of comes out of nowhere and attempts to wipe her memory. Yep. He thinks the job's finished, keeps it pushing. He doesn't wipe Bree's memory. And that is, as Bree continues to go throughout the story, goes throughout school, she's discovering magic. She's trying to see what magic has to do with the death of her mother. Yep. Because I think her mother died the day before. No, her mother died the day she got accepted to this program.
Yes, because they had a huge argument. She was like, "We will talk about this later," and Bree was like, "Later never came."
So the prologue, it starts. There's a car accident. It's Bree's mother passes, and then chapter 1 is 3 months later.
Yeah.
And so as we answer the questions, I'm gonna try to fill in the gaps for the audience. And so we're just gonna jump straight into question number 2. Question number 2: in Bree's quest to find out the truth about her mother's death, which character would you say was the most impactful to her on her journey?
So I think a couple of characters were super, super impactful. Sel is one of them, because Sel, he didn't baby Bree. he took no mess from her. Like, it was like, okay, he didn't hold her hand, and, you know, he understood that she had grief, but it's like that wasn't who she was. And I think at the time, especially in the beginning of the book, everyone saw Bree as like this girl who just lost her mother.
Yeah.
And Bree was much more than that. And she's like, you know, yes, this is what happened, but I'm tired of people saying sorry for your loss. And I think Cell was something a little bit more refreshing for that, because he didn't hold her hand. And as you go through the book, he kind of like helps her in a way where it's like, you gonna figure this out yourself or you gonna drown. And it kept, I feel like that was really, really helpful for her. I also think William was a really big part of helping her as well, because him as a healer, he not only helped her physically, but he also helped her with the history of like figuring out more about the order and the round table. And I think that was helpful. And this might be a little controversial.
Here we go.
We talked about this before.
Here we go.
So I think Alice was a little helpful. And why I say it was helpful is because in the beginning of the book, Alice was like, you're a delinquent. You're going to get us kicked out this program. And I think that kind of fueled Bree into like being pushed to like find out more about what happened with her mother and more with the order. Because that might be a little controversial, but I think sometimes that like fuels your determination.
I like Alice. Alice was cool. For the audience,
I ain't like
her. Cell is essentially so there's another character, Nick.
Yes.
After Bree gets in trouble, they're at the fight, they see this fight happen on campus, Bree discovers magic. Ultimately, the next day, Bree and Alice, both of them are minorities. Alice is Asian.
Yes.
They both came to this program together.
Yep.
So they call into the dean's office the day after the fight, and they're about to get suspended, but ultimately, you know, both of these are accelerated students, so you guys are, you know, we're going to give you guys a second chance, but here's your mentor, Nick. Long story short, Nick is in the Legendborn as well.
Yep.
Cell is Nick's bodyguard.
Absolutely.
And so essentially Cell is just kind of like, he's kind of no nonsense. I really do enjoy Cell. William is another person like you just mentioned. He's in the order as well.
And he's a healer.
He's a healer. And so when we were referencing these characters, understand that they are in the Legendborn. The Legendborn are the people who are fighting for the cause of, I guess, mankind in this story.
Yes. So because like the Legendborn are like the people who have powers or who are descendants of people of the Round Table, and then you have once-borns who are regular human beings who have no power, and that would be Alice at the beginning of the story, because she has no idea what's going on in this world of the Round Tables. And then you have vassals, who are people who know about the order, but they don't have like the magical powers that the Legendborns have.
And then you have the Shadowborns.
Yep.
Shadowborns are the demons of this world, which is funny because Cell is part Shadowborn.
Yes, and he's one of the top. He's a Kingsmage, right?
Yeah,
and he's one of the top like demons, as you will say. I also have a problem with the terminology of that. It's a little bit in the book, but because it's like they frame him as like, you know, this so dark person with dark features, curly hair, and it's like he's bad. Like, it's like, oh, we have to keep you at ease because you're so powerful that, you know, you can end up destroying us all because you have that Shadowborn in you. But your job is to, you know, protect Nick, who is basically the head honcho of the Round Table.
And they grew up together.
Yes, and they grew up basically at the hip. Like, I believe they talked about how they trained together. Like, he was literally, Cell was literally brought to Nick just to be his bodyguard.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just like,
I like Cell's story. It's, you know, those outcast characters.
I love a morally gray character.
I do appreciate him, especially with Cell's story, because I mean, we can kind of see Cell was dealing with a lot of internal conflict.
Yeah,
like the majority of characters in here that I appreciated. My answer to the question was Patricia, the therapist.
Yes. Oh, yes. How could I forget about her? But yes, she was super, super important.
I like Patricia and I wrote down 3 reasons. One, she was a therapist. So with the change, with the grief of your mother passing, the entirely new environment that you're in, the fact that you're the only person who looks like you in that environment, it's important to have somebody who you can talk to. She had a good relationship with her father, but at the same time, the grief was weighing so heavily on both of them that, you know, for some people, like, seclusion is kind of like the answer.
Yeah.
And so Patricia kind of came in at the right time. So I think that the fact that she was her therapist, the fact that she was a Black therapist,
Yes.
Was one of I think another importance, because I mean, it's just funny. I don't, and only Black people, and I guess white people too, but like there's just, you can just relate.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, when you, like, I can just imagine Bree on campus, all of these things are working against me. Okay, my dad just set me up with this therapist, let me meet him.
Yeah.
And then also too, Patricia was a student on campus at the time. Bree's mother was a
on
student at
campus.
campus. So there's that type of connection. What, 3, 4, 6 degrees of separation?
Yeah.
That I appreciated about Patricia. And then of course, the last reason I think Patricia was so impactful, and I'll follow up with the remaining questions on it, is because she introduces her to root magic.
Yep.
And for the audience out there, root magic, the quote that I put down is, it takes a village to raise a child. And the reason I put that is, with Bree's mother gone, her dad unable to connect with her, Patricia introduces her to this power that can help her solve essentially all her problems.
Yes.
And so for me, Patricia was that character that stood out to me the most. She wasn't in it as much as, of course, Sel, Nick, William, those characters, but she was so impactful in the times that she was there that I just had such an appreciation for her and her character in general. But yeah, do you have anything else to say on any of those characters?
Yeah, no. Like you said, Patricia, she was a really great, insightful character, and she plays a much bigger role in the second book. And I know you haven't read the second book yet, but she plays a much bigger role in the second book because that root magic is super important to the overall encompassing of the story. Because at this point, when Bree got the root, like when she learned about root magic, it's like, okay, I have root magic and I have this mage, right? And I'm like, how do I balance these two? And it kind of like brings her to a point where it's like, I have to choose, or do I have to choose?
Yeah,
right. Yeah. So it's like it gives her like that balance of like, okay, do I go with my ancestry, or do I follow this new order of magic that I have?
Yeah.
And it's like, how do I find that way, and how do I find who I am?
As a reader, have you ever found a fantasy book that kind of mixes two different magical systems, if you will, in the same character?
No, not really.
Okay, so this is
Not
very much
really.
an origin story.
Like this is something that you don't really see. A lot of people will either focus on like magic of their ancestry, or I can't really think of one that like. And I've read a couple magic books lately, but I can't think of one where it's like, oh, you have these two conflicting paths.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's always like a conflicting path with something else. So no, this is very new, very fresh.
Yeah.
And again, that's another good reason why people should read this book.
So that leads me to the third question. During Bree's journey, she discovers she has root magic power, which allows her to interact with her ancestors. What significance does this play in the story?
So the significance of her like being able to interact with her ancestor, it's kind of like she finds more of herself. Yeah. Because her mom was kind of so sheltered and closed off with like the information she shared with Bree, that Bree didn't really get a chance to just ask her everything that she needed to ask. Yeah. And like going back to like when Bree found out, her mom died. She goes back to that moment and it's like, is any of this real? Like, what's going on? And it's like, oh, there's something more to my mom. Yeah. There's something more that I need to find out. And so this root magic plays a part in this because she gets to visit her ancestors and get to see their journey and like what all of this means. And then ultimately, she finds out how, she becomes the descendant of King Arthur. But it's like, this is something new for me. Yeah. And again, I think that helps play into the part of her identity of like, whether it's like, oh, do I have to pick and choose, or can these two magics work together? And how does that work if it works together? Yeah, I agree.
I really liked the book as I was reading it. Once root magic got introduced, I fell in love with it. I really do. I love anything that has to do with ancestor conversation and people really tapping into their history. And so I wrote down to the answer. I was like, Bree's connection to root magic allows her to connect with her ancestors. Yep. It was almost like a physiological effect because her grandmother, Vera, at a certain point almost like spiritually goes inside of her, and like she's having conversations, like actual conversations with her grandmother. Her grandmother is telling her certain things. And the reason that I feel that the root magic was so significant was because I wrote down she was able to see and understand the spiritual warfare in ways that she referenced herself as after Bree.
Yeah.
And when she says after Bree, she's talking about after her mother died, which is funny because the reason that she has root magic anyway is this book is so thick.
No,
because I'm kind of jumping
it.
at the very end, but at the same time, it's tying it up.
Uh-huh.
She has root magic. When she goes back, what root magic does for her, it allows her to almost watch her foremothers' life in like real time. And so when she goes back, she sees that the slave master at the time, who is I think it was like slave master Arthur or something like that. It was a slave master Arthur, ends up raping Bree's foremother.
Yep.
And of course she becomes pregnant and she escapes as a slave.
Yep.
While she's escaping, she does this blood oath with the gods that essentially says, protect my daughter.
Yep.
And I think it's kind of getting hazy. Catch me up if I'm saying anything that kind of veers off. But she does the blood oath, and the gods tell her, okay, well, in order for this oath to kind of continue to be passed on, the mother has to die, and then the daughter, then it transfers over to the daughter.
Yep.
So it clearly opens when the mother dies in Legendborn, and after Bree is accepted into the school, there's right after when she goes to school and she sees the magic, you kind of can start seeing how everything's starting to tie up. So your mother passed, and now you have this magic, and now it's on you to kind of continue and push the legacy forward. Yeah. So forgive me because I'm not, like I said, this part
you're fine. You're fine. Yeah.
This part of the book I really enjoyed because stepping outside of Legendborn, stepping outside of Bree, if the message to any individual out there were to resonate, I would hope that it would be tapping into how you got here, the people who you come from. Those things give you a better understanding of the world that you're about to encounter, and some best practices to take in order to encounter it successfully. And so some other notes that I wrote, I said she was able to understand her role in its entirety in regards to the war. And when I mentioned the war in the book, Legendborn, they call it Camlin. So Camlin is the spiritual war. That's where all of the demons and the demons come in. They just kind of like wreck shop.
They open up these gates.
They open up gates.
In these different parts of, the scene is set at UNC, so they open up gates in different parts of UNC. And basically these demons start coming out, and it's like, oh, okay, we have to, the round table's like, oh, we have to fight them. Yeah. Like, we have to get to them.
And then, but in the book, and all of the characters' references in the book, it was like, well, why are these gates just like, gates haven't been opening this frequently in centuries. And so they're trying to get to the bottom of it. Everybody's sitting back saying, Camlin, the war is going to come. And so, again, when Bree kind of taps into her root magic and she gets this confidence and kind of like this ability to, want to go confront this head on, because even then, and another thing that I appreciated about the book, Bree discovers the truth about her mother's death maybe like 65% into the book. So essentially, like, her objective is solved in a way, very, relatively halfway through. But there's still more to go because,
and she keeps going.
And she keeps going because at a certain point she recognizes, okay, this is bigger than me. Yeah. And it's moments like that in the book that I had a true appreciation for, when a person is able to sit back and say that, yes, my life is my own, but at the same time, me giving it to others and to this ultimate cause is what makes it an even better life.
And I think that's where some of those characters come in that I was talking about earlier, of like who impacted Bree, kind of comes into play. Because let's say, like, she never met Sel, or like Alice was more supportive and stuff like that. I feel like she wouldn't have had that determination to like keep going forward if that didn't happen. I agree. Because it's like, it was like a domino effect. It's like, oh, okay, Alice don't want to talk to me no more. Okay, I'm going to go figure this out. Nick is acting a little shady. I'm going to go figure this out myself, because it's like, what is this? Like, I need more. And she couldn't go to her father because, like you said, everyone handles grief in different ways. And as her father was supportive of her, it's like, you're not understanding. We're not understanding the same grief right now. And, so she had her it was just her and Alice who comes on this campus. She didn't know anybody else. Yeah. She had Charlotte in the beginning, but, it became a point where it's like, okay, this is going to push me further, and I'm determined to find something new. And I think all of that happening in the beginning kind of pushed her forward.
I'm shocked Nick did not get any type of
I don't know,
mention at all.
So with Nick, and again, I read the second book. So with Nick and talking only about the first book, it kind of gave, a little bit of a white savior complex.
Yeah.
It's like Nick is holding her hand, like, okay, we gonna do this.
He was a little too accommodating. I don't like that.
And I feel like and then she started dating him, and I just felt like it was just, I felt like if it wasn't for, some of the, again, accommodations that he did, some of the way that he approached her, I think Bree would have been a little bit stronger a little bit sooner.
Which is why I thought Sel was, if there were I don't know if you believe there was a love triangle in this joint or not.
Yes,
Let's jump on it quick. Let me catch the audience
the
up.
fact that you said that.
Let me catch the audience up real quick to kind of let them know where we are. All right, so you guys kind of know how it opens in the beginning. Again, Bree goes to school. She discovers magic. She partners. Nick is her mentor. They kind of had this little love interest kind of going on back and forth. So with the war that's coming up, the Legendborn they're holding this kind of trial for what they call pages. And a page is a person who's a recruit to kind of come on and help fight the war for them.
Yep.
So Nick, he's jaded with the Legendborn. His dad ultimately kind of he's one of like a board member in this secret society.
Yep.
He's kind of like the long lost son because when Bree discovers the Legendborn, she's kind of like headstrong into it. Nick, who's her mentor in her, everyday life, kind of has to step into it. And so
to help protect
her. And so when Nick comes in and says, well, Bree's my page and I want to like kind of bring her on, everybody, again, this is predominantly, if not all white. This is an all white society.
Yep.
She is the only black person. And the person who she's about to be the page for is essentially that nigga, that person in charge.
Yes.
He's white.
But
so of course there was just a lot of uproar from the people within the Legendborn.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of where we find ourselves in the middle. And you were sitting back saying another character. I really did like William. William reminded me a lot of Patricia.
Yeah.
Because he was very patient and I felt like he was an older, wiser individual. And you need those things.
Which is crazy that you would say that they are older, wiser individual when at the breadth of it, what, Bree is 16, and anybody else in like early college, like 16, 17, maybe hit 18. I think in the beginning of the book they said Sel might have been like 18 years old. Yeah. And then so that means like William's probably maybe 22. Yeah. Like, could you have made those decisions at 22 years old?
I think that the fact that they kind of that they had this dual life was the fact that they kind of made them more mature. Yeah. Because even though with Sel being teenage age, the age of a teenager, it was still one of those things that he just carried. He carried himself on some note. I really loved. I loved Sel the minute that he first stepped in. Yeah. And even like his little first encounter with Bree, I loved it. Yeah. Because you don't know who these people are. You're here for a specific job. He was, out of everybody in the book, with the exception of Bree, he was my favorite because I like characters who know exactly what they want, even amid their own internal conflict. Yeah.
Sel was an amazing character.
So yeah, I hope we caught the audience up to. Oh, you didn't read the book.
The love triangle. We were talking about the love triangle.
Yeah, the love triangle. Sel would have been a far better companion for Bree than Nick would have been. Nick, again, indecisive.
I
And
agree.
then it's his dad, Lord Davis, and it's so funny. You can kind of see the nepotism.
Yep.
Within the story because. When Nick comes back to the Legendborn, Dad is rolling out the red carpet for him. Son, anything you want. Oh, you want to bring back this black girl to be your page? Sure, let's make it happen. Yeah. And it's just kind of like no questions being asked on Dad's part, but everybody else is asking questions. Yeah. I'm not gonna ramble too much more. I gotta jump into this next question because again, like I'm gonna ramble with every question. So that was question number 3. Let's hop into question number 4. The book touches on a number of themes: grief and healing, identity and belonging, legacy, and social justice and inequality. Which theme touched you the most?
I want to say social justice and inequality. Growing up, when I was an undergrad, I went to the College of William & Mary. And the College of William & Mary is 8% black, maybe even less now. It was like 300 of us, right? And it was like 8,000 students. Okay. Hopefully it's a little bit better now, but when I went, it was like we were all in a group chat. Like we were all in multiple organizations and stuff like that. So focusing on the inequality and injustice, it was like, oh my God, I see myself in Bree because I was also at this PWI trying to fit in, trying to figure out where I could go. And on my campus, we also had secret societies.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, I want to be a part of this. I want to try this. I want to try that. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, I was this minority Black girl trying to fit into these white spaces, you know, and it's like, do I really want to try to always appease them and fit in?
Yeah.
So when I saw that throughout the book, in my head, I was like, girl, turn around. Especially like, again, in the beginning of the book when she's like, oh, we have minorities here. And I was like, this is our most diverse. And she kept constantly going through that, you know, and I think that's strong of her character. But, you know, for me, I would have been like, you know what? I'm going to find the Black student organization. I'm going to find other people who are just like me where I can like, you know, find more of a community. And so the fact that she kept going through that inequality and like, also like the first part where she was in the back of the cop car and the cop was asking Alice, she was like, oh, so how did you get in? Scholarship based? And Alice was like, yeah. And so then he turned to Bree, who is Black, and she was like, well, how did you get in? Need based? And she was like, no, merit based. Like I'm here because my grades and my transcripts speak for themselves. And I just think that was like always the thing throughout the book, even at the end of the book when she pulled the sword. And it's like, oh my God, like who is this Black girl who's able to pull this sword? Like that, does that mean that she's a descendant? And again, book 2 goes more into that lineage and stuff like that. But it was like, wow, like, you know, these are different things that she had to deal with within the book. And I think that she's a super strong individual for being able to handle that.
I agree. I too went to a predominantly white high school, a predominantly white college. And so there was moments where I just really felt like Bree. My predominantly white college, shout out Mississippi College. I definitely felt more as there were Black students everywhere, or there were Black students where they needed to be. But I definitely felt more of a minority at college than I did at high school.
Yeah.
And so, like there was certain points where I was reading where I really was able to kind of connect with Bree and, you know, a lot of the troubles that she was having, a lot of the slick shit people would say to you when you're the only, you know, person of color in an institution like that. So,
and you know what? That probably comes out more because, you know, one of the themes you talked about was like legacy.
Yeah.
You know, all these kids are coming from like big money and stuff like that. And Bree's coming from this small town. Like, her parents prepared for her to like go to school and saved up and stuff like that. But these kids are coming, they're, you know, nepotism, like you were saying. Like it's really like a theme, a part of the book, like, okay, my dad did this. Tor's dad like gave billions to like the B school and it was named after them. Like, so these are kids with like money, legacy, and now it's like, okay, I'm this Black girl coming into this, you know, high sedity space, and it's like, okay, I have to try to fit in. Yeah,
legacy was the theme that, of course, that I connected with. As you can tell with my previous answers, Patricia, root magic, legacy. And in the previous answer I gave in question number 3, legacy was the one that I tied with the most. And I look at the 3 main characters. Would you agree the 3 main characters were Bree, Nick, and Sel?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so all the 3 of them had their own things that they were dealing with from a family standpoint. You know, Bree's mother passed, and I'm talking about, if we look at Bree and her root magic ability to trace back to and have conversations with the ancestor, kind of get a better understanding, you can articulate your legacy a little bit more candidly because of that root magic. Nick, same situation. Your dad, Lord Davis, like a board member on this secret society.
He's really high up on the chart.
Anything that essentially you want, you can get the strings pulled to make it happen. Sel's mother. They kind of vaguely, I vaguely kind of remember it, but I think that even, correct me if I'm wrong, when Bree went to go look back in time to her foremothers, wasn't Sel's foremother connected with that as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm trying to like, because again, the second book connects a lot more with their legacy and their lineage, and it goes way more into detail about like how kind of Sel and Bree kind of like intersect with each other, as well as Nick, because again, he's supposed to be a descendant of King Arthur, but I believe at the end of this book we learned that he's not. He's not the descendant of King Arthur. He's actually descendant
Lancelot.
of King Lancelot. So it's like, you know, in the second book you go really, really deep into like these lineage and how they kind of intersect and what happened with Lancelot's, you know, in that whole scenario.
Yeah.
So I think that the overall descendants of their lineage is like really cool to like look at, especially when it's like Sale is a Shadowborn. It's like, how is he connected to all of this? How is his foremothers connected to Bree's? And I think that that's why it provides a great landscape for an amazing story.
I agree. And to go back to like the three characters, it's so interesting that all of their ancestors essentially had met at a certain point some centuries prior to that.
Yeah.
And it shows you that the things that the specific individual does here matters even when you're gone. I mean, the Bible talks about in Exodus, it says the sins of a father is passed down to the fourth generation. And so when you take that and you kind of tie it into this book, and you can see that Bree is having this struggle because a slave master had raped her foremother some centuries ago. For me individually, it just makes me more aware of the decisions that I make on a daily basis. Because by the time I start putting kids out into this world, they're going to have to answer for the sins that I have done.
Yeah.
And so that was the reason that legacy has stuck out so much to me, because it's a constant reminder of where you come from, the responsibility that you have to things in the future, and also the ability to help fortify and solidify your foundation.
Yeah.
And so, it's like I said, I wrote down my notes. I think I just said everything.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because one thing that Bree's dad and her always said, like, they would have texts and conversation. They were like, oh, if you do this and that, you're going to come back home. But one of the things that he's always said is like, where do we begin?
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
And that was like a constant theme, like you're saying, like that's something that her dad would always say, or she would repeat. Where do we begin? In the beginning. Yeah. And so her going back with her root magic to like listen to her, to figure out her ancestors, that it's just like that's one of the prominent themes throughout the whole book.
And you say you've read all three in the
So I only read the first two. The third one comes out, I think, March 23rd of 2025. And so I'm hoping to get the arc ahead of time.
The book connect, the book plug.
So I can read it and like start talking about the third book. But I read the first and second one.
Okay, cool. All right, yeah. It's were there any things in the first book that you were kind of like, I could. Were there things in the first book that, and I'm gonna ultimately end up reading the entire series. Mm-hmm. I guess I should ask, what were some things that you, if any, that you disagreed in the first book with?
So at first when I read the book the first time, so I did do a reread. When I read the book the first time, I thought adding the root magic part was a bit of a lot. So, because again, when I first read the book, I haven't read books where it's like dual magic systems. Yeah. Right. And so when root magic got introduced to it, I was like, okay, where's the author going with this? Like, this is like so much for even Bree to handle. Like, I have to focus on, the order. Now I have to focus on this root magic and figure out, again, where all of this ties into place with her as a character. And so I think that at first, when I first read it, that was like one thing. I was like, okay. But then when I read the second book, I was like, oh, wait, this all makes sense. Yeah. And so if you get to that point in the book where you're like, okay, this may be a lot, or this may be, a lot of world building or something like that, I would keep going.
It was a lot of world building.
But you know what? I loved it because I felt like I was on campus.
Yeah,
I felt like I
agree with that. Yeah.
I feel like I was literally on campus going through all this things in the order. I think a lot of regular adult books kind of miss the mark sometimes on like that world building aspect, because it's like I want to be placed in the world. Yeah. Right? If you're saying like, oh, the trees are green and this and that, I'm just like, okay. But if you're like, the trees are like vibrant green and like the trunks and the spaces are like huge that someone can, like, I don't know, it just gives more to the story.
And the way she was describing how magic would like almost come off of either people or things like a steam or something like that. It was like, it was either red or green type of magic that would come off of people. Yeah, it was, as I was reading it, and I kind of felt that way, probably like, let's call it 40% through the book, when they were walking through campus. I believe it was her and Nick. And I felt like I was just like, a regular sophomore, just back on campus, just kind of walking through. I forgot where I was going with that point. One of the things that I thought was interesting, because I had read it and then done a couple of reviews and then came to the realization that this entire book took place in a matter of 2 weeks.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And that goes back into like the whole love triangle thing, because how do you fall in love with this man, Nick, in a span of 2 weeks? I'm glad you said said that.
Let's ask women. Woman, how can a woman fall in love so fast? I guess guys fall in love fast. It depends.
Like, I get it. Like, yes, you can fall in love with someone, but to be willing to put your life on the line in a matter of 2 weeks, it's crazy to me.
And then it was like the entire initiation process. She had to go through. There were 3 trials that she had to go through in order to. It was a scavenger hunt. There was a combat that had to happen. She was in the tunnels at the near the end of the story, fighting like just all-out warfare with demons.
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. I'm like,
girl, you just dropped on campus.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, and you haven't even really gotten in good with your professor, and we're already up here having catastrophic
events happening,
war going on, and that you're at the helm of it. And so that was fascinating to me. But again, I was just kind of like, you know what, this is fantasy, so fuck it. It's just 2 weeks. It's gonna be 2 weeks.
But I also think that kind of played into the role of me as a Black person, and it's like, do we as Black people really, would we do something like this? And that's what kind of made her a little, she stood out for that. Bree as a character stood out for that reason. Because, I would see a demon, I would have called my dad, Dad, come pick me up. I'm not doing this. I am not doing this. You see that? And then, especially with Alice not believing her and people thinking she's crazy, it's like, okay, you know what? I need to retreat.
I knew their friendship was going to be rocky at the very early on. I mean, and I'm glad you mentioned Alice at the beginning. It's always important to have that friend that kind of keeps you grounded, and she definitely played that part. But she wasn't
a good friend at first. She wasn't.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it. I
don't think she was a good friend at first. Me having her as one of those characters that pushed her along was because she was such a bad friend that I felt like Bree needed to find someone else to be friends. She was grasping. She was grasping at straws to find a home, to find comfort, to find someone else to be able to talk to and relate to. And so when she met Nick and Sel, it's like, oh, you guys see, you guys understand, more so Nick than Sel, because Sel didn't know at first. But it's like, oh, you know what I'm talking about. You see me, you hear me, you understand what I'm going through. You see these demons, you see the magic, and I'm not crazy. And it's like,
Sel had suspicions at first.
Yes.
Because Sel, at the beginning, Sel did not trust Bree. Who is this chick that kind of comes out of nowhere, and the guy who I've sworn my life over to protect is just so enamored with her in such a short period amount of time. She's coming to all our secret society events. Dude, what are you doing?
It's been 2 weeks. It hasn't even been 2 weeks at this point. She met him. She met Nick as her guide. Yeah. And then they had that little scene where there was a demon on campus, and Nick kills the demon. Bree gets bitten, and then she's at the mansion, and he's like, and she tells Nick at that point, hey, I kind of remember everything. He's like, what? Let's Sel mesmer you and erase your memories, and we'll try to figure this out. And then she seeks him out in his geology class and was like, okay, I'm ready to know more. I want to know what's going on, what the heck's happening, because I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
So the fact that this book does span over 2-3 weeks is the craziest thing ever. Yeah, because they have lived. Okay, in that 2 to 3 weeks, they have lived.
Yeah, I mean, as I flip through this, is 50 something chapters.
Yeah,
and we were just going crazy for the first 2 weeks of it. I'm interested to jump into the next book just because of the cliffhangers that were left in this book right here. And so, without giving we're kind of already giving spoilers, but without giving too many crazy spoilers, of course, we come to find out that, like we said, Bree is the descendant of Arthur.
Yep.
And so when this when Camlin is under full throttle and everybody's in war, the sword that needs to be pulled from the stone in order to kind of end it all. Nick originally is, the one who people presume will be able to pull it. He's up there pulling for his life.
And he can't pull it.
And he can't do it because he's not the descendant of Arthur. So around this time, Bree is she's completely tapped into the root where she's almost 2 people at once.
Yep.
To where she's living in the stories of her foremothers.
Yep.
But then simultaneously fighting this war in real time.
Yep.
She pulls the sword. Everyone is in awe. It even causes Sel at the end to acknowledge her as the one he should throw his authority to.
Yeah.
Which is a nice moment because again, Sel is he's just this badass throughout the entirety of it. To kind of see him come around full throttle. And even then, that one time when he offered to train her, it kind of it didn't throw me off, but I was just kind of like, oh, okay, like it wasn't untrustworthy to me.
Yeah.
At first, I was a little suspicious, but I was just like, I don't think he has an ulterior motive because, wanting this. Nick did, though. And so Nick was trying to figure it out. But the thing that I appreciated about Cell was Cell just allowed things to play out. I mean, he still do his research. He still was going to, make sure every stone was left unturned. Didn't make sure every stone was left unturned. But he, that's the thing I appreciated about him. I think I can just say this, he's my favorite character. Patricia, number 2, and Bree, 2A or 2B.
Yeah.
I can't leave the main protagonist out that. But who would you say was your favorite character?
Cell was definitely my favorite character. Again, I love a morally great character, someone who's a little bit different from everyone else and who kind of defined the odds even though Bree was going through all these different things that like discrimination and stuff like that, Cell was also going through that because he was a Shadowborn. Yeah. He's half Shadowborn. So I really resonated with him with that. And then I also resonated with Bree as well for those exact reasons. Bree did get kind of annoying in some parts, but I also have to remember she's 16 in this book. And
she just lost her mother.
Yes.
And so, I read a book earlier about 4 or 5 episodes ago that dealt with grief. And I've said it before, I'm fortunate enough to have both parents still in my life. I can't attest to like the psychological trauma or like uneasiness that one has when they can't pick up the phone and like call somebody, especially with it being that they had a fight.
Yes, right.
Before your mother passed, you guys had a relatively a fallout. And so she's 16, she has that kind of weighing over her. And then, now you've been exposed to a very real, tangible spiritual warfare.
Yep.
You're 16. I was just trying to figure out how I'm going to get my license in and, see if I can convince my parents to give me a car.
Yeah.
That's what I was going up against. And so I will say Bree was a wonderful protagonist. I really did enjoy her. We didn't speak on Lord Davis enough. Like Lord Davis was Nick's dad. I kind of just want to, he was a representation of white America to me.
Yes,
in the fact
absolutely.
of, you kind of like, he accepted Bree only because Bree was attached to Nick. And
he felt like it, and he also felt like that if he didn't accept Bree, Nick would have been like, okay, I'm not doing this no more.
So he had several ulterior motives, and we come to find out, I'm gonna just throw this spoiler out. We come to find out that Lord Davis, Nick's dad, was the one opening up the gates across campus, allowing these demons to come in because he wanted to expedite Camlin.
Yeah.
So Nick could ultimately get called to the throne and, saying, all right, son, I've kind of handed the business over to you. Have at it. And so when that was happening, I was like, boy, if that is not a metaphor of America in terms of, I think specifically of the crack epidemic in the 80s when the CIA allowed cocaine to be thrown into the neighborhoods so that they can get a profit off of it.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, you are willing to sacrifice people within your own proximity for your own power. Lord Davis was the epitome of America.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons why there was this love-hate relationship with him. Because I kind of understand it in a way. But at the same time, I ultimately despise it.
I was just like, how could you do this to like your son, to your people, to, the whole order in general? Because if I'm not mistaken, when you become a part of the order, there's two. There's like the page and there's a scion. Mm-hmm. And then, so once you're the scion, like if you die in battle, like your bond with your page, like kind of like dwindles a little bit. And it's like you're dying too. It's like, oh my God, like my scion died, I just feel like I'm lost without that person. And so the fact that he kept trying to expedite it, which means that other people from the order would have to eventually die. Yeah. And it's just crazy. It's like, how could you do that to your own? That
speaks to the greed of man.
Yeah.
And again, that's just another thing that I think Tracy just hit so beautifully in this book, was just the fact that, like, don't trust half these niggas with smiles on their faces.
Yeah. And he gave the the look of like an old white man in power, willing to do anything in the Deep South. Yeah. That was very like, okay, this is where that part of the book is going with this character. And Lord Davis, he was a lot.
He was. And he gave me a little bit, he was the reason why I had a little bit compassion for Nick's indecisiveness, a little bit. But, my thing is with Nick, I ultimately feel that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So even though while Nick is, even in the end of the book, Nick disappears. As I'm sure the second book goes into that one.
Yeah.
I'm eager to. It's. We're gonna talk about this.
I'm trying like to make sure like by me reading the first. That's why I had to do a reread because I wanted to make sure that I like snapped at what happens in the second book because I don't want to talk. We're talking about the first book.
We're gonna bring you back for the second book, and we're gonna have to. I want to discover the whole trilogy the same way I want to discover the whole trilogy of Children of Blood and Bone.
Yeah.
I want to continue to dive into this. I'm going to continue to explore the King Arthur mythology and everything that ties up into that because this is definitely a good, I guess, soft introduction, if you will, into that entire world.
Yeah.
But let me hit you with this last question, man.
Wait, before we hit the last question,
talk to me.
I have a question for you.
Oh, God.
So at the end of the book, me having read the second book, at the end of the book, Bree, she grabs the sword. Sir Davis and Nick vanishes. What do you think happens with Bree, after everyone finds out that she comes into power, that she's actually the descendant of King Arthur?
What do I think happens?
Yeah.
I think that, and you're saying this as somebody who's read the second book knowing what happened. I think what happens is that, all right, I'm going to say a saying and then I'm going to follow up with a saying. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Mm-hmm. So she's now recognizing that she's top dog. And with that, she's very intelligent enough to be able to make sound decisions. She's, as we see in the end of this book, she's battle tested now. Yeah. So now that you've been through the mud, you kind of know what needs to be cleaned up. I think ultimately what happens to her is that she takes the charge by the throat, and she is like, okay, this is what can we do, what can't we do, and how can we move forward with both of those facts. And so I think that she accepts her role for what it is, and she goes about it honestly and genuinely. And you said okay?
But, as someone who read the second book, I want you to while you're thinking about that, think about also this whole book focuses a lot on the good old boys, right? This is the supremacy of our organization. This is how our order is built upon, Okay. So it's
so she's
what is this black girl who's a descendant of first of all, how did this happen? And it's secondly, how do we as an order move on with this black girl being at the helm of
as you say that, I think of black women who've stepped into government positions, especially in the South. I think of Shirley Franklin, former Atlanta mayor, first female Atlanta mayor, black woman. I think of Fannie Willis, district attorney here in Georgia. And I think of when you're black and you're going up against the status quo, God help you. Yeah. When you're a black woman going up against the status quo, God be with you. Yeah. And so, it's
what's the saying? We got to work 10 times as hard to be twice as good. It's crazy.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I have the 2 additional books in my book list. So I guess I'm gonna go ahead and for my siblings, I'm gonna text my siblings, see if they can just get that to me for my Christmas present. But you have any more other thoughts on the book before we jump into this last question, lady?
No, go ahead. Okay. I feel like I said the breadth. It's so much that we could dive into with this book that we will be here forever.
Yeah, there was even now when you mentioned Tor, we had Tor, we had Evan.
Yes.
There's so many characters here who are it's good monkey wrenches that have been thrown into this book. So yes, I think that this is a perfect book for anybody who's definitely into YA books. Anybody who loves fantasy, those books it takes you quite on a ride. Yeah,
absolutely.
But yes, so my fifth and final question. Making real good time. If you could recommend this book to anyone, who would it be and why?
So if I could recommend this book to anyone, first I would love to see Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler look at this book and read this book and say, wow, we're going to make this into a TV series or a movie franchise. Because I think that both of them have such a unique talent for artistic expression that they'll take all the elements of these books and really bring it to life in the way that I think it deserves to be brought to life. I know that someone has brought the rights to like make this as a TV series, so I'm praying that they do it justice.
Well, those rights get purchased and repurchased and sold all the time. So, I mean, something like that could happen.
Yeah, but I think that, after seeing, Creed, like what Michael B. Jordan did with Creed and, all the different elements of how they, put in different anime elements, how they take action, how they're both really big, like geeks and like, oh my gosh, I like this sci-fi, I like this science fiction, I like anime. I think they could really do something special with this book.
I want to add a name to that one because when you said it earlier, I was just like, damn, that's a good one. Jordan Peele.
Yes.
I think that like if Jordan Peele, Michael B. Jordan, Ryan Coogler, and Donald Glover.
Ooh, yes.
All sat down in a room
be really great for that.
together, and it was just kind of like, let's sit down with Tracy and let's like
figure this out.
I think that movie would probably be ridiculous.
Because I think Jordan Peele will also be really great with like the demon effects.
Yeah.
And making it scary and really the breadth of this is like, the magic, magical system, going to your ancestors, making sure that they understand the Arthurian history. Like, I think all of that, I think that would be perfect for them to read.
And I think, so it's, I want to steal your answer. I want to say that one as well. I also, and it's kind of an unfair answer, even though it's still my answer. I'd want to recommend this book to Black girls.
Absolutely.
Because you follow Bree, you see that Bree has a lot going up against her. And the quote that you just said in terms of working 10 times harder to only get half as much.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's just our reality.
Yep.
And when you're able to get lost in fiction like this, it can be inspiring. Again, like I'm a Black man, mid-30s, YA book, and the thing that resonated with me the most was legacy, and it was so poignant that I had to make phone calls to certain family members to just have conversations. Yeah. But that's what a good book does.
Absolutely.
And I feel that with young Black girls who are still growing up in the world, still figuring it out, you can step into this book and understand that it doesn't get easier, but you get stronger.
Yes.
And
they'll resonate with that.
That's that's just kind of like the what we have to kind of push forward with in life.
And this is one of the books that, people are like, oh, Lauren, what's a good book recommendation? I recommend this book every time.
Yeah. Because
again, like I think it's a really great beginner friendly. The world building is amazing. You kind of understand some of the things going on, like the UNC, like you kind of get the feel of a college, like like, oh, this is setting in a college campus, and then it adds certain elements to it where it's like, okay, I can see this and I understand what's going on.
Yeah.
It's not super hard to grasp. All like it may be hard to grasp like all the different themes. You may have to do a reread, but you will resonate with something within the one of the main characters that you feel like, okay, I'm also going through this. I totally understand what's going on, and again, that's why I recommend this book time and time again.
Well, I'm a relative book nerd. Quay's a bigger book nerd. Like you're the biggest book nerd that I really know. I mean, Lady Jessica, of course, is a book nerd, but it's for people who like really tapped into fantasy. I'm like, okay, like you're nerd. Mm-hmm. Erd.
Yeah.
And so I all that to say, I really appreciate the recommendation. I appreciate you coming to sit down with me today. I'm definitely looking forward to future episodes, future books.
Yes. Discussions. I have so many recommendations.
Go ahead and shout the people out. Go ahead. Yeah, I mean, we're going to drop everything. So, yeah.
So again, I'm Lauren Covington, and you can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Lemonade, Blue Sky at hey_bookies with 2 S's. And yeah, you can watch me. I review different books. I talk about mostly fantasy, sci-fi, thriller, and mystery books. I love a good thriller and mystery book. I know we talk about fantasy, but I also love a good mystery thriller book. And yeah, I just give recommendations. I work with different publishers to also make sure people are diversifying their bookshelves because I think that that's super important. Like, yes, there are good books by, white authors, but there's also books by diverse people as well that I think should be in the limelight too.
And also, by the time this episode drops, if you need an entertainment lawyer, hit her up.
Yes.
Go ahead. Anything you need situated. Make sure you're not signing faulty contracts.
Absolutely not.
But yes, I put this water down real quick. Again, I truly do appreciate you coming on. How was the experience, yo?
It was really great.
Yeah.
This is really fun. This is really cool.
Chilled, relaxed,
I
nothing
love
too
this.
crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, cool. We're gonna wrap this episode up. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for checking in this episode today. Legendborn, Tracy Deonn, entire trilogy. You need to go copy. You need to go read it. That's all I have for today's episode. We will see you guys on the next episode. Continue to read. Stay safe.
Bye, guys.